Point Park baseball breaks out the lumber for a doubleheader, while softball travels to Indiana and Kentucky for the weekend. And track and field continues their season strong. The Pirates surge to a 9-3 start, while the Penguins keep their postseason hopes alive. The NCAA crowns 2 basketball champions, the MLB gets into the swing of things, and NFL hot stove continues to heat up. And what chaos awaits in the NHL's final week and the postseason? It's time to come on down to the Pioneer Sideline. Hello everyone and welcome back to Pioneer Sideline. I'm your host, Natalia Hillen. The Point Park University baseball team played in a 3-game series against Ohio Christian this past weekend. In Game 1, the Pioneers fell to the Trailblazers 3-1. However, for the doubleheader on Saturday, Point Park took home the 2 wins, with Game 1 ending with a final score of 20-0 and Game 2 13-7. At the start of Game 1 on Saturday, Point Park got off to a great start and was up 10-0 after 2.5 innings. In the 6th, they added 7 runs, making the score 18-0. The 17 hits were scored by 10 different players. Key players include Jared Campbell going 3 for 3 with 3 RBIs, 3 runs, and a homer. Christian Taveras was 3 for 4 with 4 RBIs and 4 runs. Eddie Javier Jr. had a pair of hits and RBIs, getting the score to 11-0. Mashali Brito and Louis Gonzalez were 2 for 4 and had RBIs in the later innings. Finally, Chris Williams was 1 for 2 with an RBI double, and Jordan Campbell was 1 for 2 with a triple, 2 runs, and a walk. The final score was 20-0. Switching gears over to Game 2 on Saturday, the Pioneers took the win back home to Pittsburgh 13-7. At the top of the first, Point Park scored 5 runs, and shortly after, Ohio Christian responded by putting up 5 in the bottom half. Ohio Christian's Stephen Larkins got a 3-run double to make the score 5-5. Later in the innings, the Pioneers put up 4 in the 6th and 4 more in the 7th. Key players were Eddie Javier Jr. going 2 for 5 with 2 runs, Jared Campbell, who went 3 for 5 with 2 runs, and Isaac Santana, who went 4 for 5 with 3 runs and 2 RBIs. Ethan Parker pitched for Point Park. He held the score by putting up zeros in the rest of the innings. In the 7th inning, Campbell and Santana reached base and came in from an RBI single from Brito. Williams also got a 2-run homer, and this made the score 13-5. The Trailblazers ended up getting 2 runs, which made the final score 13-7. This past Sunday, the Pioneers also traveled to Cincinnati to play a single game against Wilberforce and won 8-0. The Pioneers are currently 24-10 overall and 14-4 in the River States Conference. So far, Point Park has won all 6 of their RSC series this season. Point Park's next doubleheader was today against Georgetown. The Pioneers won both games, with Game 1 ending at 8-6 and Game 2 ending with a final score of 4-1. Make sure to stay up to date on PointParkSports.com. Point Park will be playing against WVU Tech on April 12th and 13th. Good luck, Pioneers. Switching gears over to Point Park's softball team, as they have had a few games this past week. They played a doubleheader on Friday against Brescia University in Kentucky and fell to the Bearcats in both games. The score of Game 1 was 1-0 and Game 2 ended with a final score of 4-3. On Saturday, the Pioneers traveled to Indiana to play Oakland City in a doubleheader. They won Game 1 6-1 and lost Game 2 7-4. In Game 1, PPU started scoring in the 3rd. Haley O'Neill drew a walk and put up a runner for Melanie Taylor. Taylor hit a single, which helped O'Neill advance into the scoring position for Mara Ignema. Ignema got a single herself. Mia Arndt put up the Pioneers 0 and 2-0 with a single to left field. The Mighty Oaks then picked up a run in the bottom of the 3rd. Sydney Reese hit a single up the middle, which allowed Welsh to score. The final 2 runs came in at the top of the 7th, with 2 back-to-back singles by O'Neill and Taylor putting 2 runners on Ignema. In Game 2 against Oakland City, the 6th inning was PPU's biggest inning as they scored all 4 runs. The Pioneers fell to the Mighty Oaks 4-7. Point Park is 12-16 overall and 6-12 in the RSC. Point Park will face Alice Lloyd in a doubleheader this Thursday in a River States Conference East Division matchup. Good luck, Pioneers. After the break, we recap the track meets from this past weekend, as well as the men's golf tournaments to start their season. Stay tuned. Now let's send things over to Hannah Bazet to recap the track team's results at George Mason and Slippery Rock. Hannah?
Thanks, Nat. Point Park's men's and women's track teams traveled to 2 separate meets this past weekend, with some competing at the George Mason Dalton Ebanks Invitational and others at the Slippery Rock Dave Labor Invitational. Beginning with the highlights from the George Mason meet, in the men's 100 meters, Demir Lomax placed within the top 10, coming in at 9th. He also placed 12th in the 200 meters. In the 800 meters, Ramiro Olunke brought home the Pioneers' highest score for the event with his time of 1 minute and 54.58 seconds. It was another strong meet for freshman Kanye Mills, who placed second in the 110 hurdles with his time of 14.65 seconds. In the 400 hurdles, Kanye placed third. In the men's 3,000 steeplechase, Yannick Windoband came in 4th. Finally, the men's 4x400 relay, consisting of Juan Barrera, Olunke, Wesley Trower, and Mills, brought home 3rd. Congratulations, boys. Now moving on to the women's highlights from the George Mason meet. Sideline's own Natalia Hillen placed 6th in the 100 hurdles with her time of 14.88 seconds, and in the 400 she took home 9th. Falling behind Hillen in the 100 hurdles was Emma Romer, who placed 16th. In the 100 meters, Diamond Rush had the highest placement for the Pioneers, coming in at 8th at 12.35 seconds. In the 200 meters, Maya Greschner came home in 17th place, followed by Rush in 19th. At the Slippery Rock meet, Michaela Rice placed 16th with her time of 1 minute and 4.22 seconds. Junior Allison Palacio had the highest placement out of all of the women's team at the event, placing 4th in the women's 1500 with her time of 4 minutes and 53.72 seconds. Finally, in jumps, Eden McElhaney placed 10th in the high jump, and in the javelin event, Lena Single placed 13th, followed by McElhaney in 14th. Congratulations to our men's and women's teams, who had a very busy weekend. The teams both compete again April 12th at the Westminster Invitational, and we are so excited to see how they do. Now let's send things over to Cade Montgomery for an update on the start of the men's golf spring season. Cade?
Thanks, Hannah. The Point Park men's golf team has been on a heater to open up their spring season. They just competed their 3rd spring event, and they finished in the top 4 of each of those events. Junior Troy Lowry, a former junior college All-American, has been leading the charge for the Pioneers. In the Alice Lloyd Spring Invitational, the team finished in 5th out of 13 teams at the end of day 1 and completed the tournament in 4th place. 4th place as a team was just 9 shots off of the team leading score of 30 over par, 590. Lowry started strong with a 1-under round of 69 day 1 and shot even par 70 day 2. Senior Anthony Santilli went 75 and 74 over the 2 days, which was 9 over for the tournament, and placed him in a tie for 10th individually. Sophomore Anthony Maltoni finished in a tie of 20th, and junior Tartrice Kalinda finished in a tie of 40th. In the University of Northwestern Ohio Spring Invitational, the team finished 3rd out of 5 teams. Point Park finished 35 strokes behind the first place team, but only 6 strokes out of 2nd place. Lowry shot back-to-back rounds of 3 under 69 with 10 birdies in the process to claim a 1-stroke victory individually. The win gave Lowry the honor of being named the NAIA Men's Golfer of the Week. Congrats, Troy. Maltoni had his best finish of the spring, thus at 3 over par and a tie for 8th place. Santilli finished in a solo 18th with a 2-round over of 10 over, and Kalinda finished in solo 21st at 13 over. Monday, the team made the short commute to Cannonsburg to compete in the Rosen Memorial Invitational at South Point Golf Club. The team dominated and captured their first team win of the spring season. Lowry won the event individually, shooting a round of even par 72 with 2 birdies on the front 9 and 1 eagle on the back 9. Santilli shot a 3 over 75 with an eagle and a birdie. Kalinda broke 80 with a 7 over 79 with 1 birdie, and Maltoni rounded out the team, scoring with an 11 over 83. The team competes next at the Grove City International Invitational at Grove City Country Club on Thursday, April 11th, looking to continue their stellar play into the River States Conference Championship later this month. Back to you, Nat.
Thanks, Cade. After the break, we hear about the rest of the sports world from this past week. Don't go anywhere.
Take them cue and open their mics.
Today marked the 1-year anniversary of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette strike. Point
Park University just hosted a campus-wide meeting.
Plans for the rapid transit bus line are not set to conclude until 2025.
Welcome back. Now I'll be sending things over to Mike Hodgetts for all things locally. Mike?
Thanks, Nat. The Pittsburgh Penguins will remain very much in the playoff hunt in the NHL's Eastern Conference thanks to the point they salvaged in last night's overtime loss to the Maple Leafs on the road in Toronto. Trailing 2-1 late in the game, Drew O'Connor came up big and leveled things even for the Penguins, sending the game into overtime where the team would lose but come away with an ever so valuable point in the standings. With that lone point, the Penguins sit tied with the Detroit Red Wings for the second spot in the NHL's Eastern Conference wildcard race. Heading into Monday night's game, the Penguins had a 40% to 45% chance of making the playoffs, dependent on different metrics and forecasting. The Penguins have tonight off, but will surely be doing some scoreboard watching as the Red Wings and Capitals will be playing head-to-head, and the Islanders, Flyers, and Devils all with game action of their own as well. The Pens will have a better idea of what the standings look like by the end of tonight and get back on the ice on Thursday with a huge tilt scheduled against the Red Wings at PPG Paints Arena. Puck drop is scheduled for 7 p.m. In MLB news, the Pittsburgh Pirates continue to play good baseball in the month of April, sitting at 9-3 so far on the season and first place in the NL Central. The Pirates have won 3 out of their last 4 series after splitting a 2-game matchup at home versus the Detroit Tigers this Tuesday. On Monday, Pittsburgh outfielder Brian Reynolds hit his 100th career home run en route to a 7-4 win in Game 1, where Reynolds went 2 for 5 on the day. Reynolds is the 7th Pirate to hit 100 career homers for the club in their team history. The Pirates currently have a 1.5-game lead in the division over the Milwaukee Brewers and will look to continue to be in first as the week goes on. Pittsburgh's next set of series will be 2 NL East matchups as they go on the road for a 4-game series against the Phillies going into the weekend, then traveling to Queens to play the New York Mets on Monday. That's all for me this week. Now, let's send things over to Gabe Ebersol to recap us on everything happening nationally. Gabe?
Thanks, Mike. For the second year in a row, the Yukon Huskies have been the last team standing as they captured the national championship last night. The Huskies were able to overcome the tournament's 3rd overall seed Purdue and back-to-back National Player of the Year, Zach Edey. Led by senior Tristan Newton, who scored 20 and added 7 assists and 5 rebounds, UConn's total team effort was able to overpower Purdue. Zach Edey scored 37, but continuously attacked in the paint on defense, a poor rebounding night, and 14% from 3 were deciding factors in the 75-60 final score. On the women's side, it was a game that solidified redemption and perfection, as South Carolina Gamecocks were able to get revenge on Caitlin Clark in Iowa to complete a 38-0 perfect season. The 10th undefeated team in history to win the women's national championship, South Carolina pulled away in the second half to avenge last year's Final Four loss to Iowa, 87-75. Gamecocks' Camila Cardoso, 15 points and 17 rebounds, paved the way, along with leading scorer Tessa Johnson, who contributed 19 off the bench. Iowa's Caitlin Clark started off hot with 18 in the first quarter, but finished with 30 on 10 for 28 shooting in the most watched basketball game since 2019. Moving up a level to the pros, the NBA is entering its final week of the regular season. With only 3 to 4 games remaining per team, the Los Angeles Lakers and LeBron James have been making a late push towards the top of the play-in, going 9-2 in their last 12. At the top of that conference, the T-Wolves, Nuggets, and Thunder still are separated by a single game, while out east, seeds 2 through 8 are all subject to change in these final contests. While the Milwaukee Bucks have had some recent struggles, dropping 4 in a row in 7 of their last 10, and on the other hand, the Dallas Mavericks have won 9 of their last 10, moving into the 5 seed behind MVP candidate and future scoring champion Luka Doncic. Expect a lot of changes in seeding with 14 games slated for tonight, including a showdown between the East's top 2 seeds at 7:30 Eastern and a potential play-in preview when LeBron and the Lakers take on Steph and the Warriors at 10 Eastern. Another league headed into playoff season is the NHL with 4 to 5 games remaining. The race for the final wildcard spot in the East is red hot, with 4 teams within 1 point of claiming the playoff berth and another 2 sitting in contention. Each game has major implications for the postseason. The New York Rangers have a multiple-game lead in the race for the President's Trophy and won the most games despite the 6th best goal differential, and the Dallas Stars currently hold the top seed in the West. Switching gears to some important NFL news, the Houston Texans continue to make some massive noise this offseason, trading next year's second-round pick for always displeased yet former All-Pro wide receiver Stephon Diggs. After acquiring Diggs, Houston restructured his deal, wiping the final 3 years of his contract and allowing him to become a free agent this offseason. Since the Buffalo Bills traded the receiver after inking him to a 4-year, $104 million extension in 2022, they will take a cap hit of over $31 million next season. This is the 6th highest dead cap hit in NFL history and the highest ever for a non-quarterback. As both the Bills and the Texans lost in the AFC divisional round last season, we'll be able to measure how this trade plays out for both of these teams in the future. Finally, the MLB regular season is underway. 2 historic franchises, the New York Yankees and Pittsburgh Pirates, paced their respective conferences early at 9-2 and 9-3. Sitting in second in these conferences are the 8-2 Cleveland Guardians, who have the league's best run differential at +36 through 10 games, and the 9-4 Los Angeles Dodgers, who lead the league in hits, RBIs, and home runs so far. That's all for me. Back to you at the desk, Nat.
Thanks, Gabe. The men's NCAA tournament has just concluded, which means we need to recap our brackets. I'm going to be sending things over to Jacob Kubik to give us that recap. Jacob?
Thanks, Nat. The men's national championship semifinal featured 2 favorites and 2 Cinderellas. However, for these Cinderellas, it was no longer happily ever after. Number 1 seed Purdue and Zach Edey handled DJ Burns Jr. and NC State and booked the ticket to the national championship for the first time since 1969. For UConn, however, taking on 4th seed Alabama, this was familiar ground as defending champions. UConn continued to show throughout the game with Alabama that they remained to be the team to beat. So the championship match was set. This was great news to our remaining brackets that had these 2 teams alive. At the conclusion of the semifinal round, it was Jake Bell who had the advantage, predicting a perfect championship round matchup. Jake Levinsky, Hannah, Faith, Natalia, and Nick were closely behind. The championship round became do or die for these brackets, and the outcomes became very clear. If Purdue won, Jake Bell would win the Sideline tournament. If UConn was victorious, it would be Hannah who clinched victory. And as they have throughout the past 2 tournaments, the UConn Huskies won the national championship, giving Hannah first place with 1270. Natalia was close behind with 1090, and Nick was third with 1080. Jake Bell fell just short and remained in 4th at 1040. Ryan Thiele made a jump up the leaderboard to snag 5th place, and Jake Levinsky finished 6th. And that's all for me this tournament. Back to you at the desk, Nat.
Thanks, guys. After the break, we discuss the final week in the NHL and the upcoming playoffs. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Case of the Week. This week, I'm joined by Nick, Jake, and Ryan to discuss the final week of the NHL regular season and what to expect from the playoffs. All right, guys, so let's hear it. We're going to start with Nick. What do you think about the regular NHL season so far?
So far, it's been probably one of the most entertaining regular seasons in history. There's just been so many different storylines to really watch this season, and it's just been so much fun. You know, you look at like success of some teams that weren't really expected at the beginning of the season, like the Vancouver Canucks being top in the Pacific and the West and possibly top in the NHL this year. You know, a lot of people really didn't expect that coming into the season. So, you know, seeing their success is something that's awesome. You know, seeing as good as Elias Pettersson's been and obviously getting that big contract extension he got, the success of Thatcher Demko, Quinn Hughes starting to look like an absolute star in his first year as a captain. And I think that's been one of the biggest ones. You look at other storylines, obviously Colorado is still doing what they've always done. Dallas really coming up and becoming an absolute juggernaut as well in the West. The Oilers, off the really slow start, now starting to really come up, show what everyone expected. And in the East, obviously Carolina, the Rangers, you had those expectations, and they're obviously meeting those expectations that everyone thought. You got teams like the New Jersey Devils, who everyone expected, to be up there in the top 3 with them. And obviously this season's not been the season at all by any means. And obviously that's really due to their goaltending, and the stability in net has not been good there at all. And then, in the Atlantic Division, you have Toronto, Florida. Florida especially really riding the success of last year, going to the finals unexpectedly. Really riding that, and all those teams is kind of doing what people expected.
Yeah, we're going to hear from Jake now.
So obviously, being in Pittsburgh here, Penguins are making the playoffs. I never doubted this team from the start. I know I've been made fun of, I've been laughed at, but when you got Sidney Crosby and Malkin playing the way he is, and then I know you trade Gensel, but you bring in a player like Michael Bunting. He's obviously not better than Gensel, but he just brings a different element to his game. He's kind of like a Patrick Hornquist. So I think the Penguins make the playoffs. Ryan, do you got the
I agree with you, too. I feel like the Pens could make the run for the playoffs. Now, we ain't going to go far in the playoffs or win the first series, but us getting into the playoffs would be great. And this season's been great with storylines. We're getting old hockey back with Matt Rempe in New York, and that's what I love. I want old hockey back. This is the most this league has seen skill in a very long time. But I also want to see the big hits. I want to see the fighting. I want to see what hockey actually is.
And that's what the playoffs bring, are big hits.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
They're going to be fights.
And you look at the matchups that are really possible. You're going to get that. Toronto versus Florida, Tampa versus Boston, Colorado, Winnipeg. You're going to get those heated rivalry matchups if the playoffs stay as they are right now. But obviously, I don't think that's going to happen either.
Yeah, and a matchup that the Penguins could draw are the Rangers in the first round. If they
Your favorite team?
I know we do not like the Rangers here, but potentially if they get that second wild card spot, they'll play the Rangers. But the other spot they're fighting for is the third spot in the Metro, with the Islanders currently being placed in that spot, and the Penguins will play the Islanders in Long Island for the last game of the season. So a lot on the line there. So whoever gets that spot will play Carolina, which I think Carolina's a force to be reckoned with in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, you don't want to play Carolina. They're scary. They're probably going to make it. I think they'll beat the Rangers in the second round if we don't play the Rangers.
I don't think the Rangers get to the second round, to be honest. I think they're frauds.
Wow.
Ryan, how Igor
what
plays.
do you think here?
Again, Igor has not been good in the playoffs, and we all know that. So, for the Rangers to be good, it's how good Igor decides to play in the playoffs this year. That team, as much as people don't think, it runs through that goalie. If he doesn't play good, the entire team don't play good. You can say the same thing about all these teams. And we'll look at Winnipeg. When Hellebuyck don't play good, that team falls flat. So it all depends for how Igor decides to come out of the gate. He can't come out slow like he did against the Pens all those years ago. He has to come out hard and fast for that team.
Yeah, bouncing off that, goaltending is huge in the playoffs. When you need that big save, it's a must. Momentum changes, they're huge in the playoffs. You need goalies to play good. And Igor, he's got some playoff experience, so we'll see if he can make some noise this year.
And I want to hear what your opinion is on the Penguins.
Oh yeah, obviously, they obviously had a really, really not good start, or for the most part a good season, but you look at this team now, like Jake mentioned, the addition of Michael Bunting. Yes, he's no Jake Gensel by any means, but he's really looked good. He's really helped, in my opinion, rejuvenate Malkin this year. Malkin has started to become, that player we're used to seeing out of him, because he was kind of starting to fall off a bit, I think, this season. And then ever since Bunting came in, he's really started to rejuvenate himself, and I think that's been a big part of the Penguins' success so far.
Another thing with Malkin starting to play prime Evgeny Malkin here is his line mates have not been good. They're young guys that just haven't had that experience, and Bunting's got that experience, and he's got that fight that he brings to the table as well. And another thing where Carver Kells picked up his game as of late, so that's really helped Evgeny Malkin grow his game.
It all depends on our goaltending. I mean, I don't want Jari in the playoffs one bit. I don't think he deserves a spot to play in the playoffs for us. I think Ned should be our starting goaltender coming into playoffs. I mean, if you look at the last stretch of games, Ned's been playing in every single game and has lost probably 1 or 2 out of the last 6 for us. I mean, there's a reason why Jari isn't playing good, and it's the same problem he's been having every year, his glove hand. It's just as bad as Murray's was. Murray was playing here. I mean, Ned should be our game one starter for us if we get to the playoffs.
And Jari obviously signed the big extension this offseason, but what it comes down to is you got to start the hot hand, and Ned's been that. And if he continues it, maybe Dubas looks to extend him in the offseason.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think, if the Penguins, which I do believe the Penguins will make the playoffs, like I said, yeah, I do think you go with Ned. I think you just have to, like you said, ride the hot hand. Goaltending's huge in the playoffs, and if you have a goalie with how much momentum, you look at like Ned's last 9 games. He's 6-0-3, excuse me, and he's been, he started all last 9 games for the Penguins, including a back-to-back, and once again, he's proven, he has what it takes to be the starter for this team, and like I said, you have to ride the hot hand. I think he's a goalie who is capable of beating a team like the Rangers in round 1.
Exactly, yeah. And another team I want to look out for in the East is the Tampa Bay Lightning. I don't think a lot of people are talking about them. You never want to face a guy like Vasilevsky in the playoffs. He's got a lot of experience, 2-time Stanley Cup winner, and that power play. I mean, we saw it in person Saturday. It's buzzing. Oh, you got Kucherov, Point, Stamkos, Hedman. They got guys that have been there and done that, and they're going to be in a wild card spot. So maybe the Leafs, the Boston has to play Tampa Bay in the first round. I don't like that matchup at all.
No, I would not want to play Tampa Bay in the first round. It's probably going to be either Tampa Bay Boston or Tampa Bay Florida, which either one of those two, we've seen it past in history, the past few years when Tampa Bay or Boston or Tampa Bay and Florida meet up in the playoffs in round 1 or 2. They're trying to just basically kill each other in this series. Like, it's an absolute bloodbath. Yeah. So I think that's definitely going to be the series I'm most excited for in terms of entertainment value. And like I said, I think whoever comes out of that series, like you said, I don't think I'd want to play Tampa Bay. No. Right now, they were 8-1-1 going into that game against the Penguins on Saturday. So obviously they've been absolutely buzzing. Like you mentioned, Vasilevsky's really found his game. Obviously he had that slow start after he came back from injury, but ever since like the past 20 games or so, he's been one of, if not the best goalie in the NHL, in my opinion. He's back to his full form. Like you said, Nikita Kucherov's absolutely tearing the entire league apart this season. He's back to his absolute superstar mode, which I don't think he's even left to begin with. But, you look at the supporting cast around him of Stamkos, Point, Hedman. Those guys are still playing so elite. And, yeah, just the team around them. Like, even with the injury to Mikhail Sergachev, I thought this team was going to be a bit iffy. But, they've mainly found it work, and I think we have to also thank John Cooper for that as well.
I think getting Anthony Duclair has also helped the Tampa Bay Lightning go on this hot streak. He's been a perfect fit for them. So, yeah.
All right, well, do you have one last thing to say?
I don't, if you want to go.
Well, I'm really excited for the playoffs, and we'll have to see what happens, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, that's all the time that we have this week. Be sure to join us next week at the same Pioneer time, the same Pioneer channel, and the same Pioneer Sideline.